Well, let's talk to Andrew Bridgen. He's a Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire, and he's one of the people who actually raised this issue. His constituency doesn't include the actual city of Leicester. But Andrew, you've been raising this and talking about this issue now for quite some time. But I put this question to Sir Peter Salisbury yesterday, the local city mayor who's with the Labour Party. He said, we've been raising this issue with government. It's the government that's failed to act. It's the government that's failed to take action against those sweatshop owners and close them down. Is that the case, that everyone did know and everyone was alerting and saying this is a terrible problem, but no action was taken by a Tory government?
No, I think we should be asking Sir Peter Salisbury how many times he raised it with central government. The reason I got involved, Julia, is because whistleblowers from the city who got no confidence in their own elected representatives came to me. My seat does not border the city. In fact, it's the only seat in Leicestershire that doesn't border the city of Leicester. I should be the last to know, and that's not correct. So what we've seen is the endemic failure of all the protections across the employment laws, health and safety, the local council, the local police, the fire brigade, and that's quite a coincidence, Julia. I'd put it. I mean, that's really quite a coincidence. So no, I think saying that there's a blind eye being turned to it is probably being generous. We're going to need to stop this appalling practice completely, and it's not going to be just in Leicester. There's going to be other pockets of it around.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? Because everyone's saying now, and lots of the reporters who've been travelling to the area have been said, look, apparently it's an open secret. Because when people were asking, and I remember when it first emerged, Leicester had a spike, we were asking, what's the issue? Are people not social distancing? What's the issue? And then people were talking about it was a certain couple of neighbourhoods where it was a problem, and what was the issue there? And then we're told it's been more likely to be people who are from a black ethnic minority categories. And then it was like, no, it was Asians. And then that these sweatshops are largely employing local Asian people. There is a concern that we are once again in Rotherham, Rochdale, child grooming situation where there seems to be one rule for one group of people in this country and one rule for another, and the authorities, for whatever reason, and I really do struggle to get to the bottom of this, seem to think that you can't police certain groups of people because people might point the finger at you and tell you you're racist. That to me is in itself is a form of racism, isn't it? Expecting a lower standard of behaviour, not obeying the laws of minimum wage or the laws of social distancing during lockdown, expecting lower standards from one ethnic group strikes me as blatant racism.
Julia, you're preaching to the converted. The equality means equality. That's equality of everyone under the law. And what we're seeing is selective implementation of law. We've seen that with some of the protests and criminal lawlessness we've seen around the country following the Black Lives Matter campaign. It really does infuriate people. Can I come back on this absolute fantasy that Sir Peter Salisbury is making, that the lockdown in Leicester is nothing to do with the sweatshops? Let's be clear, the main flare-up of the virus in Leicester is in the northeast corner. That's in the constituency of Leicester East. That is where the sweatshops are all located. That is where the modern slaves are living. Can you imagine the sort of housing you can afford on £3, £4 an hour? Anecdotally, on COVID testing, door to door, over the weekend, maybe Friday, one house was encountered in the constituency of Leicester East, and I would point out that the Right Honourable Keith Vaz was the member representing that seat for 33 years until the 12th of December 2019 at the last election. One house on COVID testing door to door, over 40 adults were living in a 3-bedroom house. That is rife for spreading the virus. That's over, if you count the living room as a bedroom as well, that's over 10 adults per room sleeping. That's mattresses on the floor, Julia.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is we are talking about almost a society within a society, yes, operating outside of normal society norms, and which is being totally unpoliced and unsupervised and is causing a risk to not just those people who are themselves victims of this, but also to everyone else as well.
Well, I've also come to the conclusion by what's been going on and what we're now finding out in Leicester. I mean, Leicester is a red fiefdom. It's a Labour city. There's 3 Labour MPs, a Labour mayor, Labour Police and Crime Commissioner. 52 out of 54 of the councillors are Labour, 1 independent, 1 Lib Dem. But at the end of the day, I think the Labour Party only preside over Leicester. I've come to the conclusion that it's actually run by criminal gangs in large parts of the city. It's absolutely lawless.
When Sir Peter Soulsby said to us that the government wasn't actually, you were saying, look, how often did he actually raise it? He said the powers to actually close down these places, to tackle it, to send the people in to tackle the gang masters and the like. He said those were powers that lay outside of the council. Is that the case?
How many times did he report and say we need to get this shut down? And also, what you've got to remember, Julia, is linking the COVID spike to the slave trade in Leicester in the garment industry. Effectively, the 90% of the business out of Leicester is to internet retailers. When we imposed the lockdown, one of the unintended consequences of that measure was that we actually put all the physical clothing retailers out of business as non-essential shops had to shut. So we left the field completely open to these internet retailers, and they've increased their trade during the lockdown by about 45%. That means slaves working longer, more slaves in the factory, even worse working conditions. And that's... Anyone who says that this is not linked to the flare-up in Leicester, well, I think the science will disprove that.
Here's the final question. Why do people living in this country who know there's a minimum wage, why would they be working in those conditions? Why would they agree to it?
A large number of them are illegal workers. They've either overstayed their visas or they're on education visas which don't allow them to work. And others, there are some Bulgarians working in the slave factories, and they will be working long hours for probably £3.50 an hour. But they'll be put down on the pay slips, obviously, of 10 hours at £8.72, and they'll be topping up with benefit fraud.
Right, OK, I think we've got a bit of a fuller picture, certainly from the perspective of Andrew Bridgen, the Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire, live actually to us from the House of Commons.